yesterday, so
Oh,
I
that's
don't
good.
I don't know how it is. How is it in Sweden? What's the temperature there?
No, I think about 18, but it's
Okay.
been fairly warm. Yeah.
Yes. So, dear listeners, as you know, we have a topic every week, a new topic every week. The topic for tonight is motion, a law of creation. That's motion, a law of creation. So, of course, we would like you to join us in the questions and discussions. The number to contact us here in UK, it is 079 444 31366. You can call or text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 004479 444 31366. So I'm going to begin with, what is the Grail message? The Grail message, in the light of truth, by Uprushin, is a spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life, for through the knowledge mediated, the reader is again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail message deals with important fundamental questions of life by explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover, through the intuitive perception, if what is stated is the truth. Combining with matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'd like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail message, Abdrushin. The hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole, without leaving any gaps. Again and again in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail message lives, so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with seven seals. And I'd like to give you one more quote from the author. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace, if he earnestly seeks for the truth. Dear listeners, just to remind you again, the topic for discussion tonight is motion, a law of creation. We really welcome you to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us here in UK, it is 079 444 31366. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 004479 444 31366. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Gregory, this topic tonight, emotion, law of creation. I was thinking, we take it for granted, really. Every day we wake up, we go about our business, eat our food, go to work or whatever people do, and come back home, rest, and so on. And it's like and you see we maybe don't see it, but we know the earth goes around the sun, and this, or we see everything seems to be in cycles. I know motion itself doesn't imply a cycle, but you see, when you look at a cycle, you see there's motion in those cycles. So everything has to motion. As I say, we take that for granted, really, and don't even try to observe what actually is going on there. So, and even when we say here today, the topic tonight is motion, a law of creation. I mean, that's not something somebody would think about, that it is a law. Yes, you go from A to B, or let's say the blood goes round in the body or through the heart pumps it around, and again I'm saying it's all cycles because it's something you just imagine everything is to be a cycle somehow. So there's always motion going on, but again you don't think of it as a law. And then now tonight we're going to explore that. So let me ask you this question. This motion, how has it come about? Is God the power that activates that motion? And how does this motion come about?
First, the idea of, or the notion of motion implies movement, whether it is linear movement or vibrational movement or rhythmic movement. All these ones are part of the description that is used to define motion. Since we now accept that there is motion, and the motion is continuous, then we should also accept that there is energy which is needed to keep the motion going. That being the case, that energy must have arisen from somewhere. The source of that power, the source of that energy. Many people call it different names, but it can be understood that motion is there, and there is a power behind the continuous motion, which has not stopped, which precedes the incarnation of man, which precedes the precipitation of the physical universe, or even of the spiritual universe, or of the animistic universe. Therefore, that motion has always been there, and is that motion, or is that power, that maintains this incessant motion which does not stop. And we ourselves, the human spirit here on earth, or the human spirit itself, is a product of this motion, and therefore it needs to investigate how it needs to swing in harmony with this motion which preserves everything. Else, if it is not in harmony with it, then there is the possibility of being crushed, or of illnesses, which has many variations. So motion, most of the time, is taken for granted because it's always there. and we cannot consider otherwise.
Thank you for that, Gregory. You said it is necessary for us to sort of investigate this motion, and to swing in with the where the motion is, to swing in where the motion is taking us. So let us try and go deeper there. This is a spiritual discussion program, and of course we human beings are on the earth here, and so the first obvious thing you think about is the physical motion, and then being a spiritual discussion program, we also know there must be a spiritual aspect, so there must be a spiritual motion as well. So maybe I think the first thing to note, it might be a bit odd, but let's maybe start with the spiritual first. What actually is spiritual motion? Is it only in the spiritual world that you see that spiritual motion, or can we see it something on the physical, on the earthly, this of the activity of the spiritual motion on the physical, physical world? And if so, what is it?
When spiritual motion is referred to here, it means the vibrations of the spirits, the inner vibrations of the human spirit, and the processes that carry that human spirit from one point to another. There is continuous motion, and the motion we are referring to is the resultant effect of what takes the human spirit from one point to the other. There are processes in nature. These processes, some of them are cyclical. A simple example is that the human spirit has arisen from the spiritual realm as an unconscious spirit germ. In order to move out such that through experiences it will mature and on the long run return back as a self-conscious personality. To do that, it needs to experience in different realms. Beneath it, which is the world of the animistic, and then further down, the world of matter. And finally, it finds itself in the world of gross matter. There have been preparations for this. And after experiencing in the sense of the laws of creation, it is supposed to go back fully conscious as a self-conscious personality. That is one motion. There are other motions going on within the spiritual. Those motions or those activities which activate the spiritual itself, the spiritual realm itself. Most of this can be found in the work In the Light of Truth, the Grail message, for it contains all that the human spirit needs in order to understand all the activities that it needs to engage in order to return back home as a self-conscious personality. Therefore, you will find they have various kinds of motion. The simplest one we just mentioned is the one or the activity that carries it from the spiritual realm to the gross matter in order to experience, and then, like in a cyclic manner, is able to go back if its activities are in harmony with the laws of creation through which it, the human spirit, came into existence. There are also physical motions here in gross matter. The cyclical rhythmic breathing in and breathing out. That is one aspect. One is born. Before one is born here in the physical, we understand that there is the preparation, the fertilization, and then the ripening. On the long run, one is born on the earth and needs to experience with the physical senses. These senses need to mature. The brains which we have need to mature such that they are able to transmit the impression from the outside to the inside and from the inside to the outside. So they are all various sorts of motion. But the power behind this motion, which sets everything moving, that power, which every creature depends on, must have arisen from a realm which is not the spiritual, but something much higher. In this case, from the divine. Not even a divine, even above the divine. So if one looks at these things very carefully, you'll find power has always been there that activates everything that one experiences, even with the five senses.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Now, again, it's such a massive topic. I want to sort of break it down and explore more. So, now, you mentioned that we human beings are, let's say, we've been talking about spiritual motions, listeners. So, we're talking about the spiritual world. And so, we human beings originate from that spiritual world. As Gregory mentioned, it's started as a unconscious spirit germ. So what I want to ask you, Gregory, from that is, you've told us about the power that activates the motion, which is from on high, higher than the spiritual. Now, it's the spirit that is doing the journey, and so let's say it makes the decisions where to go, I guess. So what I want to ask you there really is, can the spirit basically go anywhere it wants to go? Because obviously we use this motion. You said that it's the power that behind the power is there, and we are the ones who decide where the movements are going to be. Through so how do we decide that actually that we want to go somewhere? And I'm talking from the spiritual point now, in the spiritual world.
From a spiritual standpoint, when the human spirit started as an unconscious spirit gem, it did not decide where it wanted to go to experience. These activities have been woven into creation, and the human spirit is only guided gently along such paths where it needs the necessary experiencing to mature. And in following the path which has been woven into creation, it left the spiritual realm unconsciously, came into the animistic, and finally entered the world of gross matter, or the world of matter. There are many subdivisions. Here in the world of gross matter, it needs to experience. It needs to make decisions. There are only two possibilities. The possibilities are such that in its maturing, it makes the decisions which are in harmony with the will of the Almighty, which has been hewn into creation, which many refer to as the laws of nature. In that case, it's able to mature in accordance with the will, because it harmonizes with the will. The other possibility is that it makes decisions such that it's unable to harmonize with the will of the Almighty. In that particular scenario, it's unable to mature, which maturity is required to go back as a self-conscious spirit gem. In that case, the motion, the movement that carried it right down to the world of matter will be such that it will lose its way and it will be bound to the world of matter. The world of matter is transient. It comes into being, matures, and it disintegrates to its primeval form. Therefore, a human spirit which is caught in that process, in that rhythmic process, will be crushed because the experiences will be too heavy for it. So there is the need for the human spirit to experience as quickly and sever itself in a conscious manner and rise higher towards home, its home, which is the spiritual realm. If it follows that path, it becomes conscious because its activities harmonize with the will, and therefore it will be drawn back home as a self-conscious human spirit. Whereas on the other hand, if its activities do not swing along such lines, it will be crushed in the dissolution of matter, and it will lose all the maturity it had attained at the time this happened. Whereas had it done the proper thing, such a process would be behind it, and it need not experience that. So there are only two possibilities: to swing unconditionally in the will of the Almighty and therefore mature and move towards home consciously, or not. That means you do not swing, and on the long run you'll be crushed and you still go back home, this time as a human spirit which is unconscious, just as it left its home in paradise.
Thank you, Gregory, for demonstrating the process, of how the spirit or human spirit say journey goes, and so we understand the principles and the mechanisms of what how we basically live. So I now want to explore our life on earth, and what I want to ask you is, how is, let's say, man, or we can say woman as well, as mankind or humankind, with regard to the, let's say, in his development, in regards to doing the, following the will of God, as you've mentioned there, the laws of nature. How is man doing, in that regard? Are we progressing the way we are meant to progress, or are we lost? And how are we doing?
Well, that is an open question. Are we making progress or are we lost? Well, the question is such that one has to look at these things on a universal level and then to draw conclusion, what you will find, if it were progress that is being made, then you will not have a great accumulation of human spirit in one place. By that, one refers to as like the overpopulation that is mentioned. Whereas if progress were made as such, many a human spirit would have been back home in paradise as a self-conscious spirit gem. So that we have this so-called population explosion means that many a human spirit is being compelled to incarnate and in order to mature as quickly as possible. So these are the things, these are the observations. However, this does not go on forever, because there comes a time when the world of matter needs to revert to its primeval state, because it also follows a rhythm in the coming into being and ripening and the dissolution. Just like you have a grain of corn that comes when it's planted, it comes and grows, and then after some time it matures, and then it falls down and goes into the cycle again. So that is what happens. So one should not expect that the world of matter is going to, remain like this forever. It's been growing, it will come to its maturity, and then it needs to revert to its primeval state. And those who are caught within it, when it's going through that cycle, have the possibility to lose their hard-won experiences or their hard-won maturity, because they are unable to sever themselves. So the only parameter one can see now is the overpopulation that we find here on Earth.
Now, you mentioned a couple of things there. Overpopulation is like a sign where, let's say, it's not a good progress there, because that's too much accumulation in one area. It really needs to be moving and maturing, like you said. And I'm assuming when you say that, you're meant to get back, because we have started a journey in the spiritual, and we're on the earth now, and then the point is to go back to the spiritual. So now what I want to ask you next now is that if you look at the world, technology wise, man has really progressed quite a lot. All the time you see new inventions left, right and center. Now it's like the age of technology. It's so fast, you can't really keep up with new things that are coming up. Then at the same time, if you talk about the, let's say, I don't want to call it wealth, but in terms of, let's say, general well-being of the human being, in the material sense of, I don't necessarily mean comfort, but you think with all the technology and everything that we have, you wouldn't have really poor people now. Everybody could have, whatever we need, food, shelter, all of that, there's enough money around, to look after everybody. And yet it doesn't seem, as I say, rich get richer and the poor get poorer. That's what you get to see. And so I know this is a spiritual discussion program, and it's not, we don't measure things by purely the material wealth or lack of wealth, but for me it's also like a sign of progress, because if it's a let's say a well-developed society or civilized society, you wouldn't see so much let's say poverty when you have all these resources in reality. When we are so capable, we are so technologically capable. So my question is this: I know you mentioned about overpopulation. Do you think with all this technology that we have, we can apply that, to balance this overpopulation, or to provide for this overpopulation, or am I looking in the wrong direction there?
Technology is basically an external thing and is transient, whereas the human spirit, the maturity that is required, is very different from what technology is talking about. So one cannot hold technology and say it helps in the inner maturity of the human spirit. In fact, the inner maturity of the human spirit is measured by the way it's able to use technology for the benefit of his fellow human spirits who have come here to the earth in order to experience before severing themselves to move further and make progress towards home. Therefore, if the technology, so-called technology, is unable to assist the human spirit to mature for that, because that's the basic aim coming to the earth, then it's useless. For it is supposed to assist in maturity. A simple example would be, here we have planes and you can fly from one place to the other in a short while. Whereas before we had to use horses and would have taken months, if not years. Here we are using technology. You are in London, I'm in Lund in Sweden. They're communicating and trying to look into how we can let others know about this work almost simultaneously. In the past, it would have been town criers. So you find that, yes, technology is helpful if it is used in the right sense. One should not forget that it was the same technology that many others had used to reach people and disseminate the wrong information. It's the same technology that is used to reach people and poison their outlook and their notion, to disseminate the wrong information. So it depends on who uses it and how they use it. But one thing remains clear: whatever a man or a woman or a personality has put into creation, that it must reap. So if they use technology to cause so much havoc, they themselves will have to reap the havoc which they have sown.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Dear listeners, you're listening to the Tuesday night spiritual discussion program on Blessed Radio. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdrushin. And the topic we're discussing tonight is motion, a law of creation. You can join in the discussion, and if you have any comments, the number to contact us here in UK, it is 079 444 31366. And you can call, text or use WhatsApp. If you're outside of UK, it is 004479 444 313 66. And as I mentioned, the aim of the show is to introduce you to the grail message. So if you're interested to know more about the grail message or get a copy for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that: www.grail, GRAIL, message, MESSAGE.com. Now, Gregory, I want to see really to get deeply into the the activities of the human being on the earth, and with regards to the law of motion that we're talking about tonight. So you hear the saying, work, rest and play. And everybody wants to do all, well, maybe not everybody wants to do all three, but definitely, let's say, people want to play, I can say that, and they want rest. And maybe some of us want to work as well, and maybe not everybody. So now, and we, in a way, we've talked about cycles here already, and we already know that you need all three. If you want to live in a balanced life, you need to work, you need to play, and also rest. Now, one of the things people in today's world, it's people are just in survival mode, I will say, just trying to earn enough to pay for their bills, and pass on something to their children. And it seems to look a very, very difficult life for many people, not everybody, of course. So, and all of these things, we've talked about the law of motion. Work, just by you saying the word work, you already see that there's a motion in it required, effort required in it. And then we have play, which is, you could say, more about fun. Even I could say leisure activities, sports, or hobbies, whatever hobbies people have, skiing and so on, so many things like that. And then, of course, rest is when we need to recover from what we've had in the day, during the day, or just go away on holiday, let's say. So, my question is, Gregory, again, we're talking on the earth here. How do we sort of get a balance in our earth life, with all this work, rest and play? And I'm just realizing this is a spiritual discussion program. We must include spiritual time as well. Even though we are on the earth, there has to be time for the spirit as well. So that's not included in that saying. But how do we live a life where we take care of all these activities? Because the danger is, we need just money to survive and exist. And that seems to be the priority. And then all the other things get sacrificed. How can we keep that alive, that we live a balanced life?
Well, each human spirit or each human being is unique. And therefore, each one has to find out what works for him or her. One cannot copy another person because he sees things which works for that person and he wants to, take everything and say, okay, I'll follow this path. It demands earnest effort for each human spirit to examine or investigate what its needs are, and there, on the long run, to apportion what it needs to do in terms of work, so-called, of play, or rest. Because there are different human beings, they have differing abilities, the way a musician will walk and play is different from the way a painter may walk and play. Is different from the way a doctor may walk and play. So each personality needs to find out, need to investigate in order to come to a conclusion and then to know what works for him depending on his own abilities or the area that it has decided to work or to play. So it is not right to give a general rule and say this is what you must do. Each one have their abilities and their own challenges, so their first task is to get involved with this and then come up with something that will enable them to fulfill their task. The best advice one may give is that whatever it is that they need to do, they should not forget first to reflect and let their intuition make decisions before they go out and implement it with their brains or with the body.
Thank you, Gregory. One of the listeners is telling me that we are not being heard on the website, or Bless Radio website, so I'm going to investigate that. I'm sure on YouTube people can hear us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little break, advertising break, and sort out the broadcast. Apologies, listeners, for that if you're not listening us on Blessed Radio right now. So I'm just going to double check that in a moment.
Will you call back?
No, stay online. I will just hopefully I can get this. I'm just going to play some ads right now. Okay, maybe it's not going to work that way. Just give me a moment, please. Okay, Gregory, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. My colleagues are not around at the moment, so let's continue. I know YouTube is still working, so I'm going to continue on that, and I'm just going to try and get hold of somebody to sort out the actual Bliss Radio website. Sorry, listeners, I don't know if you can't hear us or not, but on YouTube we are broadcasting. So, dear listeners, to remind you, this is Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday night spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdrushin. And the topic we're discussing tonight is motion, a law of creation. And you can join us in the discussion. The number to contact us here in UK, it is 079 444 313 66. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 00 44 79 444 313-666. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. I want to continue what we had been talking earlier about activities on the earth. One of the things we find, it's very common nowadays, retirement. People are getting, want to relax in their retirement and planning for the retirement, and people are living longer, so they're thinking, okay, when they reach 65, there might be another 20 years at least they will live, and but they feel their body, well, basically they want to enjoy the fruits of their labor on the earth that they've worked so far, and as they get older they can't move around, so yeah, the body's not able to do much more in terms of work, so they think, okay, how can I enjoy myself? So Gregory, looking at that from a spiritual standpoint, is that a good thing that people sort of stop their work and retire, and when they retire, and it's because it's like they're looking forward to enjoy their life. They've worked, like we said earlier, it's work, rest, and play, and in this case, that we were talking on an everyday life or a weekly, let's say, part of our life, and now we're talking in let's say, you could say overall on the earth life, that they've been since they've been adults, they've been working. Yes, they have had holidays and whatnot, but now they've reached a ripe old age where now they can reflect on life and just enjoy it. So would you say, from the spiritual standpoint, that that's a good way, for just to stop working when you retire?
The question is, all this while they've been working, were they not enjoying the work they were doing? That would be a counter question, because now they want to enjoy the fruits of their labor. So all this while they've been working, they have had returns, and were those not the fruits of their labor? What is seen in this particular instance is that there is the wish to withdraw from the rhythm of work and play, so-called, which they have been accustomed to.
Somebody's telling me we're not being broadcast on the website. Let's read the website. Yeah. Okay, you're back in a minute. Okay. Okay then. Okay, thanks. Hello, Gregory?
Yes?
I'm sorry, I was just trying to sort something out, so I apologize for not paying attention there. So yes, so I liked what you said there. You had a counter question. Were there people not enjoying their life, their work that they were doing, and so that they're looking forward to the end of their life to sort of enjoy themselves? So that's a very good point, because in a way we are supposed to do something that we are passionate about, so you should be enjoying your work. So yes, that's a very good point.
But where one was leading the discussion to is, in the initial instance, when you hear such statements, it gives the very strong impression that they were at work, but their minds or their spirit was not in that work. So there was no harmony between the work
So yep, that's good. Now the other thing I want to again, the activities that we do on this earth with regards to the laws of motion, how we've talked in the past before in our shows that when you're choosing what is your let's say the direction you should take in life, what's meant for us to be, and obviously everybody's got different talents. Some are, artistic, some are studious types, some are, athletic type. So, but then at the end of the day, everything that we do must have some purpose in it, right? And must have some value that we're giving. So I want to ask you, Gregory, what sort of values are we meant to, apply to decide, what is, worthy really of, tasks that we do, because there's so many options nowadays. Like I say, you can do leisure activities, sports. You can, some people volunteer. Others are, working all their life to do something just to earn their bread. And I know you said there's no standard answer for every person, but is there any way of assessing, what is, like, say, what we're doing is valuable or giving some benefit?
But it is the human spirit that adds value. It is the personality, whatever work they are involved with. It is the way that that particular work is carried out that adds value to it or does not add any value. It is how this work is done. But above all, a work which has lasting values is much better than a work which has transient values. Because if it has lasting values, it means it will perpetuate for a much longer period than something which, just vanishes within a very short while. But the key thing here is that whatever work one is involved with, as long as it is constructive to the society, as long as it is upbuilding, then one should put one's spirit into it and do it in such a way that it will ennoble the neighborhood, the surroundings. Then value is added to it. That work is spiritualized, not as we have nowadays, where the works are robotic, where the tasks are performed and one's spirit is not there. There's no reflection in it.
So thank you for that, Gregory. I just want to say to the listeners, we are now back on the website, blessedradio.org. Apologies that you couldn't hear us there. It's good to have your feedback, actually. When listeners, if anything like that happens, please do let us know. You know our number, which is 079 444 313 66. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Now, let me see now. So, okay. I have a question which a colleague of mine has asked. Jesus said, "This too shall come to pass. My words will never pass away. There shall be the life and law by which the righteous can continue to live." How do these statements relate to the religious concept of motion? So I guess what the question is about is really what Jesus, what is in this statement of Jesus, is there any reference to motion there?
Well, the word works already denotes some form of activities. Activities already means there is motion, whether it's translational movements or rhythmic or vibrational, or the works of the intellect, or the works of the spirit, these involve motion. It means that here on earth, the intellect is involved in its own vibration, and the spiritual part of man is involved in its own vibration. And these need to harmonize, the spirit setting things in motion and the intellect implementing in an earthly way what has been set into motion. So all this denote motion. When Jesus himself said his works will not pass away, you take an example when he said, by their works we shall know them. That statement is so true. It was true yesterday, it's true today, and it's also true tomorrow. So it remains for all times. Therefore, that statement does not pass away. So that is a typical example. At the same time, one should not equate the works of Christ to the works of religions. That is the biggest error. These are two different entities. What is called religion nowadays is only an interpretation of what many still remember of his activities. So his works stand aside and they remain because they were true, or these works are true for all times.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Now, science, we talked about technology, so obviously by definition include science there. Obviously science is familiar with the law of motion, and of course it looks at the universe, and so we look at, for example, we talked about earlier this Earth going around the sun, and all that is like science looks at all that. So do you think that science can also and we've talked about these laws are on a spiritual level and on the material level, or physical level. So can science, it's always advancing all the time. Do you think there will be a time when science will be able to sort of look at spiritual things as well, and like our thoughts, and could it go to that point?
Science is a product of the human intellect. The spirit has nothing to do with the human intellect, but works in cooperation with the human intellect. Since science is a product of the human intellect, it cannot go beyond its level. However, whatever it's able to recognize, it's able to make use of. There are many processes which transcend the human intellect, and therefore science will not be able to discuss these processes because it lacks the tools to do that. However, whatever is earthly, which is the seat or which is the domain of the so-called science, it is able to investigate that All others may just be recognitions of signs and tries to emulate what already existed before science came into this. The so-called science only appeared a few hundred years ago. 2,000 years ago, it wasn't called science. They had different name for it. 5,000 years ago, it was called so many different names. So who knows what will be called in another 1,000 years' time or 2,000 years' time? One doesn't know, because things happen in such a way that it keeps refining itself. But its limit, what precedes science, at best science may recognize.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Dear listeners, you're listening to Blessed Radio. It's the Tuesday night spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdrushin. The topic we are discussing tonight is motion, a law of creation. You can join in the discussion with any questions or comments. The number to contact us here in UK, it is 079 444 31366. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 31366. Gregory, I know we normally leave this a bit later on in the show. I just wondered, is there anything you would like to read from the Grail message for the listeners to sort of give them a more insight into what the Grail message says about the law of motion?
I was expecting that you yourself would do that, because
all right.
Here I am. I do not, what I need to read is in my phone.
Okay.
And it's the same phone I'm using.
I see. Okay, I understand.
That's why, unless I'm able to carry a copy, physical copy,
right, I understand,
down, and I'm in a hotel environment, so it becomes very hard.
I see. Okay, I'm just going to read, let's say, the first couple of paragraphs, which are just for listeners. There's a lecture in the Grail message called exactly the same title as our topic for tonight, which is Motion, a Law of Creation. And I just felt it's a long lecture, but we can have a little taste of it. So I'm just going to read the first few paragraphs, and it should be like a taster for you to explore the Grail message. So here we go. Motion, a law of creation. Look about you, men, and you will see how you have to live here on earth. It is not difficult to recognize the primordial laws in creation, if only you strive to observe everything around you in the right way. Motion is a basic law in the entire creation, thus also on earth. Motion of the right kind. But it is just this law which has been disregarded and also applied in the wrong way. It was only through motion that everything could come into being. Upon motion, incessant motion, therefore depends the preservation and restoration of all that creation embraces. Man cannot be considered an exception. He cannot be the only one among the creatures to remain stationary in the midst of this animating movement, or go his own way without harm to himself. The intellectual goal of many people on earth today is rest and a comfortable life. To spend the last years of their life on earth in comfort is for many human beings the crowning of all their activity. But what they are longing for is poison, and they bring about the beginning of their end therewith. I think I'll stop there. Gregory, that actually mentions something we covered a bit earlier in the show about retirement, and I think it really shows how we are superficial in our ways, and we just follow the trend of what how people are living, and not really reflecting deeply on the consequences of our decisions or actions. Because not to repeat everything again, but basically when you're coming to the end of your life, you think, okay, I can rest now, and because I've done the work already. So, and here it's a complete being told that's not right, that's not the way it's supposed to be, because motion is a constant activity, and you can't just stop being active, just like you can't stop breathing. You only stop breathing when your last breath goes. So until that end, the motion has to continue. So that so work has to continue. Obviously, you have to take account of age, because obviously you're not a youngster who can run around and do everything like a youngster can. But I guess let's talk about that, Gregory. What sort of activities would we expect, as we live through the different times of the as we progress from a child to an adult, to elderly age, let's call it. In terms of, we know from the physical side what we can do or we can't do. So is there meant to be like a different phases there? Like we have the seasons, we have spring, then we got summer coming up after that, and then the autumn, and then winter. Would you say that's like a parallel for the human being also, as he goes from a child to adulthood to his elderly age? Is there something there? And how can we, because we always say we are supposed to live naturally and follow the laws of nature, and the thing is, with the human being having free will, you can just do whatever you like. When you're a child, you can obviously within limits, but mostly you're free to do what you like. So how can we, what is it, how is it meant to be in a way with all these different ages of a human being on the earth?
Well, since the word nature is mentioned many times, yes, it's like the 4 seasons, and the time of birth, and the time of growing up, the time of strong activities, and then the time of quiet reflection. One would refer a listener to the Walk in the Light of Truth. It's a particular lecture that discusses the seasons and the sort of things one needs to do, and general advice. But the first thing which the human spirit needs at the beginning is to ensure that it's able to make use of the physical body which it needs in order to experience accordingly. It needs to make use of the physical body in the proper way, not in a one-sided manner. As you will find that there are some people who will overdevelop the physical brain in a one-sided manner and without a balance. How these things should be done, many should go back and examine the work in the light of truth. To examine doesn't mean to criticize. To examine means to absorb what had been passed on to you and allow one's intuition to experience it and therefore make decisions. So these are practices which many a person needs to, bring into play in his personal examination, such that as it moves on and it matures, it has clarity it's able to have clarity between the one's intuition and one's intellect. With that, is able to move cautiously and to experience in happiness. Else becomes a quagmire, because if there is no harmony between one's intuition and one's intellectual activities, then you run into situations where you cannot move forward or cannot move backwards. That's the quagmire one is mentioning. But the only advice one may give in these matters is let each one avail themselves with the work in the light of truth and examine it.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Now, you've mentioned it many times before as well. There's the intuition and there's the intellect, and we're using the intellect all the time, and on the earth, and sort of we are aware of the intuition, but it seems not really powerful somehow, or not or let's say we just don't use it enough, maybe. So now, one thing I want to say, everything again in every show we mention about like the laws of nature, and through the implication of that, harmony we've said between intuition and the intellect, harmony working, living on this earth. And so and what we know is on the earth we are very good at many things. Let's say building things, homes and roads and so on and so on. And then what I want to talk about next really is what about developing ourselves in a spiritual way, so on the earth, because we've talked about how the activities that we are very aware of, work, play and rest, if you can call that as an activity as well. Sleeping, I guess, is an activity. So what is the spiritual activity that we can be, so my question is really like this. We seem to have developed a lot in the material level, on the earth, what we can do. Is that really being matched by our spiritual activity, that we are spending time on the spiritual activity? And maybe it will be good to say what it is that is a spiritual activity. Is that, like some people say, oh, on Sundays they go for the worship, or maybe they go on a retreat, some people think, or some people think of meditation. Is that a spiritual activity? How would you how would you say that? What is the spiritual activity, and are we developing it or applying it as much as the earthly activities?
So the question seems to be so many-sided that
yes.
one is not clear
okay,
what the question is really referring to.
Okay, I'm going to break it down. Let me break it down, because probably there's many. Each question can bring out a second question or third question. So let's just start with the first part of it, which is, are we, we are so developed in our earthly activities, we're quite advanced in that. Are we doing this the same level? Because you said they have to have harmony. So are we having the same sort of level in the spiritual side of our activity? Yeah, let me say it like that. That will be my first question.
Well, when spiritual activities are mentioned, these activities are tied to goals or spiritual goals. And these goals are those goals that have lasting values, not just transient values. Lasting values, which values could be something like patience and perseverance. The earthly activities you mentioned in quotes of, in terms of size, these are very temporary. They don't last long. Let's say one is involved look at the telephones. 10 years ago, the sort of phones you used at that time, it's not the same type of phone you're using now. One can talk about 20 years ago. What sort of phones were you using? So these things are very temporal. Whereas spiritual activities are those activities or those goals which have lasting value. Patience, if well cultivated, has a lasting value. Honesty has a lasting value. It transcends all these temporary things. That is what is referred to here. However, in the pursuance of these temporary things, which are necessary, one may do it in such a way that one cultivates deep within one those goals. For instance, perseverance. So it depends on how we carry out these activities. It is the how that determines whether it is of value, it's of lasting value or not. If in carrying out our activities, we try in different ways again and again and again until we achieve a result, then we build up those values deep within us of perseverance. The same thing with honesty. The same thing with pure gentlemanliness. The same thing with loyalty. So the spiritual values are lasting. Whereas what you have here, they are very, these earthly intellect things, they are very transient.
Now, from what you've been saying, I'm sort of realizing that, you know, on Earth there's competitions, there's awards, people are giving for winning a race, or, you know, football, winning the championship, whatever. And obviously that's an earthly activity. And these are these are honors, they give them honors and so on. And yet, what you have been talking, which is very basic and simple things, honesty, and actually, unfortunately, I've just forgotten what you said, the other one you mentioned. What was the other value that you mentioned? I know you said honesty.
Patience.
Patience, that's right. And nobody gets a reward for that, you know, at least not in a, like a physical reward, people don't get that. And yet you said that these are lasting. And so, yes, you could say, really, the simple things in life are the real valuable things, That's what makes you satisfied and happy with your life. While the other things, which, let's say you get awards for that, winning the competition, or whatever award they give out, and that's where you become famous for those things. They're not really the important things. So it just shows how people consider these values. The really valuable things are not considered valuable, and they're basic and simple, while the things which, let's say, are given awards. I want to ask you, Gregory, what is it that's driving these things? Is it our ego? We're looking for, popularity. Why can't we follow the simple things and praise
But
those
you
things?
already mentioned it. Personal ego. But key to this is the indolence. Indolence in the sense one is unable to pursue that which is simple. And so you have a scenario where many behave like stormtroopers, where they can jump in, but when they are unable to arrive at a solution very quickly, they give up and they perish. Whereas in order to achieve that which is lasting, one needs patience. One has to cultivate patience, and one has to cultivate perseverance. A very simple example. Look at the light bulb. The man who invented the light bulb spent hours, countless hours, trying and trying and trying until he came to the form in which we now have today, the light bulb. A lot of patience, a lot of perseverance. Had he been like most people, jumps into it, and the slightest difficulty jumps out, who knows? We will still be like the Romans nowadays. We carry all sorts of things and a stick with some foil on it and moving around. So it is very clear if one reflects on these things very carefully. To have lasting values, one needs to be modest. Take things in simplicity and in modesty. One needs to be patient. One needs to be persevering. Take, for instance, you have a child. If you're not patient, then you may do things which you should not be doing. You need to persevere, because sometimes when the child is unwell, you may have to wake up in the middle of the night to attend to that child. So you could see that once you reflect upon it, these are the things which the human spirit needs to develop. Not just go kicking the ball for 90 minutes, collecting so much money, and wants to be popular. So it is the personal ego and above all indolence that wants only those very transient things, all right, quick returns within a very short while, in 5 minutes or in 10 minutes. And that's why you find people who go gambling. They want quick returns instead of them to invest their time and energy on building up. So you have the answers there for those who are honest within themselves.
Thank you for that. And another thing that is coming to me, what you've been saying, is this sort of knowledge that we are talking here. You don't, people are not brought up with that. We go to school, and you learn your maths and English, and you pass the exam, science, whatever it is that you're, studying for, and and you come out with those qualifications. But they don't do that for your, let's say, I don't know if there's a test like for honesty or patience or anything like this. These values that you've been talking about right now, spiritual values, you don't get an education in that really. So are we just meant to learn that with the experience of life? Just fumble around, do this, do that, or can we also learn that at school, or obviously this when I say that, it's like somebody has to put it in the school curriculum. But would you say, let's say we had the ideal situation where there was an opportunity to bring children up with these values, would you say that should be instilled in the at school, or how should it be done?
One needs to observe creation itself and draw values from creation. That which is temporal is what many an educationist, or what the education system prefers nowadays. And rightly so, because you cannot give to someone what you haven't got. The educational system is intellectual, or is basically intellectual. And the boundary of the intellect is very well known. What lies above the intellect, that which tends to the spiritual, the intellect is oblivious. So the intellect can give to you what it has not got. So the scenario which we then have is that these things cannot or are not taught in the so-called curricula. It is then left for the individual to experience, or from the parents using their own personal experience to impact this on the children. So how should one go about it? There is the need for man to experience and to separate that which is temporal from those things which are permanent. There are many who, as children, they are very good in games and sports. These things are very temporal. You don't expect somebody who is 18, 19, 20, who is a fast runner, then gets to 90 and be running at the same speed. So it tells you that whatever was done at that time was only for a short period of time. Therefore, the curriculum which should be devised must be such that one has to look on the one part, an intellectual one, which is for temporary things, and on the other hand, that which is for permanent things. But it takes a long time for many to come to that conclusion.
Thank you for that. Another thing, people are, let's say, you learn from your past. When you live your life, you learn from your past, and then you think about the future. What you want to do in the future, achievements and things that you're planning. And then there's also the present, what you're doing today. So, yeah, my question would be, where should our focus be? Should we be looking into the future, and that's where our goal is that we want to achieve, and so we think of the future. Whenever we do something, we're thinking about the future that we want to have? Or should we just worry about the day-to-day things, how we are living now? And obviously, I don't think you can't change the past. The past has already happened. But some people, maybe they're suffering from their past and they can't forget their past and just can't move on. So how do we deal? Yeah, what's the way forward there? Is there meant to be some sort of balance? Maybe that's what our question I'm trying to ask. How are we meant to achieve a life where we are successful, let's say, in what how we are meant to be? Are we meant to look at the past and learn from that? Are we meant to just stay in the present and just deal with things that are going on in the present, because that's a lot for people to deal with already? Or are we meant to look into the future and say that's what we should be, and we make a plan to get to that true future?
It is the decisions which we make now which affects the returns of what had been done in the past, and therefore changes what the returns may be in the future. By that one means there is that need to live in the present, because it is the present that is. The future is only based on the decisions we have made in the present. Trying to rely on the future is trying to hold onto a branch which is not there. As long as the human spirit makes decisions in the now, which decisions are to bring fruits for the future, if these decisions are in harmony with the laws through which they themselves came into being, then the returns will be fruitful. For as is well known, as a man sows, so shall he reap.
So, Gregory, following on what you've said there, is there a time limit for our sort of achieving our goal? Maybe we should just remind ourselves what actually is our spiritual goal. Yes, we are on the earth currently, but there's the bigger picture, you can say, which is to develop ourselves. So first, let us just remind ourselves, Gregory, what is our ultimate goal in a spiritual sense, and then is there some time scale where we must develop ourselves? And yeah,
there are earthly time scales and there are spiritual time scales. The earthly time scales are what we use on a very temporary basis: the day and the night and the week and the month and the year and the number of years. These are earthly time scales. The spiritual time scales are different. As is well known, in this spiritual, 1,000 earth years are as one day in the spiritual. So this depends on the wealth of experiences which a personality will have to have when it's back home in paradise as a self-conscious spirit. Therefore, the decisions which we make now, one should ensure that they swing within the will of the giver of life, such that when we go back home, we are truly alive, we are self-conscious, and we will enjoy the benefits of being self-conscious. So the scales of the spirit, or the time scales of the spirit, are much broader and simpler.
thank you for that. Now, I know you mentioned the will of God or the natural laws, and basically we've got to work or swing with those natural laws or the will of God. And I thought it would be good for the listeners to hear the natural laws. I know we've done it in our previous shows, but I think it's good to have a reminder about them. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, this we're talking about motion being a law of creation. So Gregory, if you could remind us again, what are these laws of creation?
In the first instance, it is possible for anyone nowadays to make it available for themselves. They walk in the light of truth. In this, there are two key nouns here: light and truth. Therein lies everything. Therein lies the will. And therein lies the love. All else are just designation. So when one comes to say that in the will there are laws which govern creation, because one is in creation, then that is true. One may only just use terms which seem, will I say, convenient or familiar, like the terms that like attract like, or one may refer to the term resonance, which is what science uses. But what is used in the work in the light of truth is the law of the attraction of homogeneity, or the law of attraction of homogeneous species. All this means the same. A second part may be examined, and that is the case of a reciprocal activity. This reciprocal activity is what drives this rhythmic, all these reciprocal actions, all so-called cycles, which each one comes in contact with every time, sowing and reaping. Finally, one may also consider, in the case of accumulations of density, of that which is dense sinks because it is heavy, and that which is less dense rises because it is lighter. One cannot argue with this because they are self-evident. Now they have the work in the light of truth. Truth is the will of the Almighty, and love is there. The love of the Almighty has always been there. In combining light and truth, one has everything. So whatever discussions we have in this is of no consequence unless one examines for himself or herself the work itself, which is in the light of truth, which we're only striving to scratch the surface. So the appeal to each personality is make bold for oneself to examine it yourself, so as to be free deep within and shatter the obstacles that tend to hold one down.
Thank you for that, Gregory. And dear listeners, if you want to get a copy of the Grail Message in the Light of Truth by Abrushin, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that: www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com, grailmessage.com, and you can get a copy there, or you can also look for more information if you would like that. You're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday night spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the Grail Message, and the topic we're discussing tonight is motion, a law of creation. You can join in the discussion with any questions or comments. The number to contact us here in the studio in UK, it is 079 444 313 66. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 00 44 79 444 313 66. Now, Gregory, again, in our previous shows, we've said the human being has free will, and of course, we've been all the time in every show we mention the natural laws or the laws of creation. And so the human being is a creature in creation. And yet, let's say we look at nature. We also mentioned laws of nature, which is the same as laws of creation as, also. And we look at nature, we look at plants, animals. They all, let's say, live in I'm going to use the word in harmony. They're upbuilding in their activity. Let's say, you see beautiful landscapes. Animals look beautiful. And they don't fight each other. I mean, they eat each other, yes, but they're not fighting each other. And we human beings, who is supposed to be a product of this creation, and yes, we do have free will, but somehow we don't seem to be able to fit in or swing in with these laws of nature and creation. So, and then we'd say that we are supposed to, our, let's say, journey is a journey of development. We are rediscovering, and discovering, and we've said it's not something you can go to school, that you're taught this is how you're supposed to live, and so on. That education is more about academic or to do a profession rather than, let's say, spiritual. So where am I going with my question? I want to ask you, Gregory, it's a bit of a weird one. Just when God knows that He created us the way He created us, and there's a risk of us with our free will to go astray and go wrong and mess up the world, how come He allowed this? He made it this way? Because it looks like, if you give somebody free will, it's almost automatic that you are going to, unless let's say, I say it's automatic that you're going to go astray somehow. It's like, because let's say to go to the right way, you really have to be quite careful person, I would say. But unfortunately, most of us seem to be careless, if I can use that word, in our way of living, or just not even ignorant. So why would God create a creature like that, while other creatures are and nature seem to be able to be in harmony, and then there's somebody like us who seem to be not capable or not willing to fit in with His world? How come that he made this somebody like us?
In the first instance, here is the speaker making a statement. Is that statement based on free will or not?
Yes.
So, if it is based on free will, is that free will good to ask questions or not?
I was going to say it's neutral, but it can be, yes, could be good. Yes, you could say it's good because you're growing, you're learning. I think that's good.
I think you have already answered it. One is growing. So in the process of growth, at the beginning, we set out as unconscious. In the process of becoming conscious, there is the need to make decisions, and each personality follows different paths. There is the need to weigh, the ability to choose, to weigh very carefully and choose is granted to the human spirit. That is useful and good for the human spirit. And only in weighing and choosing can one make progress. Were it not so, then as an unconscious spirit gem, if you do not weigh and choose, then you will remain unconscious. The process of consciousness entails that you need to exert yourself and bring forth the innate abilities which have been endowed. And in doing that, there are choices. As is well known, to be or not to be has never been the question. How to be, and how to be only means that there is the need to exert self-exertion to ensure those innate abilities come to the fore and make use of them. In that process, choices need to be made. Hence the free will. For if you do not make choices, how can you then mature? If, however, you then turn those choices into questions and try to humiliate him that granted you the ability to make choices, then that is wrong. So it is not right to say that the Lord Almighty knew you were going to do the wrong thing and yet granted you permission to do the wrong thing. It is how the human spirit had made use of the free will granted to them. The story is very clear. Adam, why did you eat the apple? And his response, it is the woman you, Lord, gave to me. Maybe that tempted me to eat the apple. It wasn't that I, Adam, on my own free will, ate the apple. Why did Adam not even refuse the apple? Why did he not refuse the woman given to him in that particular sense? Because he also has the free will to say, no, I won't take the apple. Or no, I won't allow the woman to. Yet he went along. So the secular debate which goes on and said the Lord Almighty must have known that we will make errors and still allowed us to go on, should be blamed, is very wrong. It is we who decided to turn the buffer and the time granted us to misuse it, for we could make use of that time and the talent granted us for great upbuilding in cultivating patience and perseverance, in having good volitions, which volitions will ensure the earth is filled, is made into the like of a paradise, where all those who experience in it sing to the joy of their fellow men or their fellow women or their fellow creatures, and to the glorification of him that granted the opportunity for these things to happen. So that is man for you. The free will is granted such that one is free to make a choice, and in learning, in one's decision, one is able to make progress on a bit by bit basis.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate what you said there. There's a little question still I have on that. You said, yes, I have the choice to do what I'm doing, and God gave me that choice. But there's another part of it, because every decision we make has a consequence. And let's say we make a decision where we harm something, and in this case, let's say, I'm talking about animals and plants. Let's say we human beings, yes, we can harm each other, but that's like we can do something about it between ourselves. But then there's these, I will say, innocent animals and plants who've got nothing, done nothing against us, and yet we can harm them. And in this world, God allows us to have that freedom to harm them, but they don't deserve that, So it's not fair. I mean, as I said, between the human being, it's like there's an equal thing there. If you do something to another human being, it's like there's a comeback from them. But with the plant and animal, it's not quite the same thing, because I mean, plants, they can't even move or do anything to sort of respond if we destroy like a forest. And animals, of course, yes, they can attack some of them, but the thing is, they don't deserve anything. You could say they're innocent in everything. They're just defending them. If they attack, it's only because they're defending themselves. So could you say something on that, about that as well?
Well, the law is very clear on this. The law of reciprocity, that whatever a person has sown, that is what it is going to reap. Whether that activity is against the plants or the animals or to fellow human spirit. In fact, it is so very sad that human spirits maltreat animals in such a way which animals most of the time look up to the human spirit who are above the origin of the animals. Therefore, you have the animals looking up in confidence to the human spirit, and yet look at what sad havoc they have created. But they have only sown, and as is well known, those who sow the wind will reap the whirlwind. Yes, it is very sad, but that is man for you.
Thank you.
It is not expected that overnight that free will is taken away. But do not forget the animals and the animistic. That sphere of activity basically is in the world of matter, and they bring all this, the budding, the planting, the germinating, and then the disintegration. The activities encompass all this. And if the human spirit do not take heed and adjust their ways, before long, these realms of the world of matter needs to return to its primeval state. And for those who have sinned so much against not only fellow human spirits, but also the animistic, will have to lose all the experiences they have gathered, because those experiences are of no use. They will now revert back as spirit gems, because it means their time, which was granted to them for maturity from the time they set out as spirit gems, had been wasted. Whereas those who have cooperated in the upbuilding will return back to paradise as self-conscious spirits and enjoy the happiness and the benefits, whereas those who, in their wickedness, who did not care for the vineyards that provide them with living and life, will automatically be eliminated. So in these matters, there is justice. There is love that granted the opportunity. And there is also the justice which will ensure that for those who did not make use or good use of that which they are granted, those will, through their activities, eliminate themselves. So what one finds is the love and the justice always applying.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Dear listeners, we've come to the end of our show tonight. I hope you enjoyed our discussion. As always, the aim is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the grail message. So we really encourage you to pick up a copy, examine it for yourself. You can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. That's www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And of course, we'll be back next Tuesday with another show, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Gregory, would you like to say something to the listeners?
Well, I wish everybody well and hope in due course each one will strive to have a copy for self-examination.
Thank you for that. So, dear listeners, have a great week. God bless. And hopefully Brother Siam is next. He should be in the studio soon, so we're expecting him to come. So have a great week, everyone. Take care. All the best.